Trees are supposed to be the safest thing in nature, the background of every hike, every park, every quiet moment outside. But what most people don't realize is that some trees aren't just scenery. They're loaded traps waiting for the wrong move, and once you know what they're capable of, you'll never look at a forest the same way again. Because some can burn your skin without touching you, some can blind you in seconds, some can explode without warning, and one of them is so dangerous that locals mark it like a crime scene just to keep people alive. And it all starts with a tree that shocked the internet by doing something trees aren't supposed to do at all. Moving deep in the rainforests of Central and South America, there's a palm that looks like it's standing on a bundle of wooden legs. Its roots stretched high above the ground, like something out of a sci-fi movie. And for years, travelers swore they had proof it could walk, claiming they'd see it in one spot, come back months later, and find it somewhere else entirely, with local stories even joking that these trees wander around villages at night. But scientists eventually stepped in and uncovered something just as strange, because while the tree doesn't technically walk, it can slowly shift its position by growing new roots and abandoning old ones, tilting its trunk toward sunlight or away from fallen trees, creating the illusion of movement over time. And even now, no one fully agrees on why its roots evolved this way, which only adds to how unsettling it looks. But as creepy as it is, this is the last time you'll hear the word safe, because the next tree hides its danger behind beauty. In parts of South and Southeast Asia, the Pacific Islands, and Australia, there's a tree that grows smooth, round fruits that look harmless, almost playful, like something you'd pick up without thinking, especially when white flowers bloom around them. But these fruits contain seeds so toxic that even small exposure can shut the body down, with reports claiming they cause intense burning, organ failure, and outcomes that rarely end well. And for centuries, people have quietly used them to make poisons, which makes it even more unsettling that tourists still stumble across them without realizing how close they are to real danger. And yet somehow, this tree is still mild compared to what comes next. In the Australian rainforest, there's a plant so infamous that locals warn newcomers about it like a curse, because brushing against it can lead to pain that doesn't fade in hours or days, but years, as its leaves, trunk, and even fruit are covered in microscopic needles that inject a powerful toxin straight into the skin. And what makes it worse is that you don't even have to touch it, because a light breeze can carry those needles through the air, meaning just standing too close can be enough, with documented cases describing pain so severe it was compared to nothing else they'd ever experienced. And some reports even suggest the sensation can flare back up years later with changes in temperature, making this tree less like a plant and more like a long-term sentence. But even that kind of suffering isn't the most immediate threat on this list. In Australia again, towering high above everything else, stands an ancient pine that seems peaceful until you look up and realize what's hanging overhead. Massive cones weighing as much as a full gym kettlebell, suspended more than 100 feet in the air. And when one of those cones drops, physics takes over, turning gravity into a weapon capable of crushing anything beneath it. Which is why areas around these trees are often restricted, because surviving a lightning strike is statistically more likely than surviving a direct hit from one of those falling giants. And yet, at least gravity gives no surprises. Unlike the next tree, which doesn't wait for anything at all. In tropical parts of the Americas, there's a tree whose fruits look like small pumpkins, but instead of rotting or falling, they detonate, violently bursting open and launching seeds at speeds that rival traffic accidents, with reports claiming they can tear into skin, trigger severe reactions, and cause permanent damage if they strike the eyes. And while the explosions are meant to spread seeds, people learned long ago how dangerous they are, with some using those same seeds for weapons, turning a natural defense system into something even more terrifying. But somehow, all of this still falls short of the tree that experts consider the most dangerous of them all. In coastal regions of the Caribbean, Central America, parts of South America, and even Florida, there's a tree so toxic that standing under it during rain can cause blistering. Its sap can blind you, its smoke is hazardous, and its fruit looks like something you'd casually eat, which has led to countless accidents over the years. And because every part of it is dangerous, locals don't take chances, marking its trunk with warning symbols so no one approaches it by mistake, because a single fruit has been reported to seriously harm multiple people, making this tree less like part of nature and more like a biological hazard zone. And after hearing all that, you'd think nothing could top it. But the final tree doesn't need toxins or explosions at all. The honey locust doesn't pretend to be friendly, doesn't hide its threat behind flowers or fruit, because its trunk and branches are covered in massive, hardened thorns that can grow nearly as long as a knife, making it instantly clear that climbing it would be a terrible idea. And while there aren't records of people being seriously injured by it, that's only because no one is brave or reckless enough to try, which might be the most unsettling part of all, because the most dangerous trees aren't always the ones that attack you. They're the ones that look ordinary until it's too late. And once you realize that nature doesn't need claws, teeth, or predators to be deadly, you start to understand why forests deserve a lot more respect than we give them. Once you sit with that thought for a moment, it changes how you see every trail, every shaded rest spot, every tree you've ever leaned against without a second thought, because danger in nature isn't always loud or obvious. It doesn't always chase you or growl or strike. Sometimes it just stands there quietly, blending in, waiting for curiosity, ignorance, or bad timing to do the rest. And that's what makes these trees so unsettling. Not just what they can do, but how normal they look while doing it. A harmless-looking fruit, a leaf brushing your arm, a place that seems perfect to wait out the rain. None of it feels like a mistake until it already is. And what's even stranger is that most of these trees aren't rare. They're not hidden deep in untouched wilderness. They grow near paths, villages, beaches, parks, places where people pass by every day without realizing what's right next to them. It's why locals learn early, why warning signs exist, why some trees are marked with paint or fenced off entirely. Because once you know, you don't take chances, and that knowledge gets passed down quietly, almost like a survival secret, while visitors keep walking past, unaware. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. That nature doesn't announce its threats. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't care if something looks beautiful or innocent, because behind the calm surface, there are systems built for survival, defense, and dominance that have been evolving for millions of years, long before humans showed up thinking the world was made for them. So the next time you're out in nature and something looks just a little too strange, a little too perfect, or a little too inviting, it might be worth stopping for a second, because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the forest isn't what's moving, hunting, or watching you. It's what's already rooted in the ground, waiting. And that idea alone is enough to make even familiar places feel different. Because once you realize how many of these trees survived by becoming hostile, deceptive, or outright lethal, you start to notice patterns everywhere. Bright colors that usually signal beauty suddenly feel like warnings. Thick shade stops feeling relaxing. Even fallen fruit on the ground becomes something you instinctively step around instead of toward. It's not paranoia, it's awareness, the same instinct animals rely on to stay alive. Something humans slowly lost as we built cities and forgot that the natural world doesn't adapt to us, we adapt to it. What's unsettling is that none of these trees are evil. They aren't attacking out of aggression or hunger. They're just doing exactly what evolution shaped them to do. Protect themselves, spread their seeds, and outlast anything that threatens them, including us. And the scariest part is that science still doesn't fully understand all of them. There are unanswered questions about why certain toxins are so extreme, why some reactions last years instead of days, why a tree would evolve explosive force or pain far beyond what's needed to deter animals. Some researchers believe there are benefits we haven't uncovered yet. Others think these plants are relics of a much harsher world, built to defend against threats that no longer exist, but the result is the same. Their defenses are now aimed at anything unlucky enough to cross their path. Even today, new reports surface from hikers, locals, and researchers who stumble into danger by accident, reminding everyone that this isn't ancient history or exaggerated legend. It's still happening. So maybe the real reason these trees feel so creepy isn't just because they can hurt you, but because they expose something uncomfortable. The idea that humans aren't always in control, that intelligence and danger don't only belong to animals, and that something rooted in one place can still be powerful enough to dominate its environment. Forests aren't passive, they're alive in ways we don't fully grasp, full of silent strategies and hidden defenses. And once you understand that, you stop seeing trees as background decoration and start seeing them as what they really are, ancient survivors, quietly holding their ground, long after everything else has come and gone. And if you think about it long enough, it becomes clear why stories like these spread so easily online. Why people are drawn to them? Because they tap into something ancient in us, a reminder that the world isn't fully mapped, labeled, and made safe, no matter how much we like to believe it is. We're used to thinking of danger as something obvious, something that chases, bites, or attacks. But these trees flip that idea completely, showing that the most serious threats don't always move fast or make noise. They just exist, patiently, doing what they've always done. A forest doesn't need predators to be dangerous, because its plants already handle that role quietly, efficiently, and without mercy. And that's why people who grow up around these trees treat them with almost ritual-level respect. Not fear exactly, but awareness, the kind that keeps you alive. What's even more unsettling is how many close calls probably go unreported. A tourist who stood under the wrong tree during a storm and never connected the blisters to rainwater. Someone who brushed a leaf, felt pain for weeks, and never knew why. A fruit picked up out of curiosity and dropped just in time. These moments don't make headlines, but they happen. And they're reminders that survival often comes down to luck and knowledge rather than strength. Nature doesn't care if you're careful in general. It only cares if you're careful in the right moment, and one wrong assumption can be enough. That's why these trees don't need to hunt. They let human curiosity do the work for them. And then there's the psychological side of it. The way knowing this changes how you feel in nature forever. Once you've heard these stories, you can't unknow them. A forest stops being just a place to relax and starts feeling like a living system with rules you don't fully understand. You become more observant, more cautious, more respectful. You look at bark, leaves, roots, fruit. You pay attention to warning signs, to local advice, to things that seem slightly off. In a strange way, that awareness reconnects you to something humans used to have naturally. A sense that the land isn't neutral, that it deserves attention, not domination. And maybe that's the biggest irony of all. These trees didn't become dangerous to target humans. They evolved long before us, defending themselves against animals that were bigger, stronger, and far more aggressive than we are. We just happened to arrive late, curious, confident, and often unprepared. In that sense, every painful encounter, every accident, every warning sign painted on bark is a reminder that we're visitors here, not owners. The forest doesn't adapt to our comfort, and it never promised to keep us safe. So the next time you walk through a park, hike a trail, or stand beneath a canopy of leaves, remember this: stillness doesn't mean harmless, beauty doesn't mean safe, and silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. Sometimes the most dangerous things in the world don't chase you, don't warn you, and don't move at all. They just stand there, rooted, waiting, doing exactly what they've done for millions of years, while we walk past, hoping we never give them a reason to remind us who really belongs there. And that realization tends to linger longer than you expect, long after the video ends or the story is told, because it subtly rewires how you interpret the world around you. A tree stops being just a tree and becomes a question mark. You start wondering what purpose each strange feature serves, why bark looks burned or smooth, why some roots stretch outward instead of down, why certain fruits are bright while others stay hidden. Every odd detail feels intentional, because it is. Nothing in nature is accidental, and the more extreme something looks, the more likely it exists for a reason that once meant survival or dominance. These trees aren't mistakes, they're solutions to ancient problems, perfected over time. What makes that unsettling is how easily modern life dulls our instincts. We're used to warning labels, fences, disclaimers, rules. We expect danger to come with instructions. But in the wild, the rules are unwritten, and the only warnings are patterns you're supposed to recognize on your own. Bright colors mean don't touch. Sharp shapes mean keep distance. Milky sap means trouble. Locals know this, and that's why their behavior around certain trees looks cautious, even ceremonial. They don't challenge nature, they work around it. Visitors, on the other hand, arrive with cameras instead of caution, curiosity instead of context, and that's usually when things go wrong. And it's not just forests or remote jungles where this applies. Some of the most dangerous trees grow near beaches, roads, neighborhoods, even playgrounds. They exist alongside human life, quietly tolerated because removing them is difficult, dangerous, or disruptive. So instead, people adapt. They mark trunks, they post signs, they pass down stories, not myths meant to scare, but lessons meant to keep others alive. Over time, those stories blur into legends, and legends into viral clips, but but at their core, they all carry the same message: pay attention. What's strange is that once you accept this, fear fades and something else takes its place: respect, a deeper understanding that nature doesn't need to be conquered to be appreciated. You don't need to touch everything, climb everything, taste everything. Sometimes the smartest move is distance, observation, knowing when not to interact. That mindset doesn't make the world smaller, it makes it richer, because it reveals layers most people never notice. The forest becomes a network of silent negotiations rather than a backdrop for photos. And maybe that's why these stories resonate so strongly, because they remind us that the world still holds power beyond our control. In a time where almost everything feels explained, categorized, and predictable, it's unsettling and oddly comforting to know that there are still things we don't fully understand. Trees that hurt without chasing, plants that defend without moving, life forms that outlast us by simply standing their ground. They don't care if we believe the stories or not. They'll still be there tomorrow, and the day after that, unchanged, waiting for the next person who forgets that. Nature doesn't forgive ignorance, so if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's not fear, it's awareness. The kind that makes you pause before acting, the kind that listens to warnings instead of dismissing them, the kind that understands that sometimes survival isn't about strength or speed, but humility. Because in a world full of silent dangers, the smartest people aren't the ones who conquer nature. They're the ones who learn how to walk through it without becoming part of the lesson. And even with all of that in mind, there's still something deeply unsettling about how quiet these dangers are, how little effort they require to exist. No movement, no sound, no chase, just patience. It's the opposite of how we're taught to recognize threats, and maybe that's why so many people underestimate them. We look for motion, for aggression, for intent, but these trees don't need any of that. Their power is built into their design. It's passive, constant, and unforgiving. Time does the work for them. Curiosity finishes the rest. What's ironic is that many of these trees were once studied for their potential benefits. Medicine, materials, even food, and in some cases, they still are. The same toxins that cause unbearable pain or severe reactions are also being researched for treatments, pain management, or chemical compounds that could help people in controlled doses. That dual nature makes them even more fascinating, because it shows that danger and usefulness aren't opposites. They're often two sides of the same thing. What harms in one context can heal in another, but without knowledge, without respect, that line becomes invisible, and crossing it comes at a cost. And that brings the story back to us, because humans have always pushed boundaries. We touch what we're told not to touch. We test limits. We assume control. It's how progress happens, but it's also how mistakes are made. In the case of these trees, the margin for error is thin. One wrong assumption, one careless step, one moment of ignorance, and the lesson is immediate. That's why people who've had close calls don't forget them. They don't laugh them off. They carry that awareness forward, quietly changing how they move through the world. So maybe the real reason these trees stay with you isn't because they're scary, but because they challenge the way we see safety itself. They remind us that danger doesn't always announce itself, that the world isn't designed for our comfort, and that survival has always depended on observation, restraint, and learning from those who came before us. Forests aren't meant to be conquered or consumed, they're meant to be understood, one warning at a time. And long after the stories fade, the trees remain, rooted exactly where they've always been, doing nothing extraordinary by their own standards, just existing as they always have. It's only when we cross into their